Hello everyone, this is Coach Dinosaur. Today I'm going to show you the part 3 of the Pirc defense on the variation of the Austrian Attack. So again, this is Black's preparation against the F4 line. So here, White plays E4, D6, D4, Knight F6, Knight C3, G6, and now F4, Bishop G7. Um, the part 3 talks about E5. Here, black should capture the pawn, and white has to capture with the F or D. Normally, uh, white plays E5 in many tournaments, but let's just talk about a little bit of D-takes E5. Now, with this D takes E5, white wants to trade the queen. And here, after queen takes queen, king takes is the main line. If knight takes, then it will be knight D5, and after that, of course, C4 attacking the knight. Knight B4, planning to play knight C2, and then knight E3 preventing knight C2, bishop F5. Of course, this is not a very good position because after G takes, the threat is still real. But in this position, white plays knight F3, prepares the line, and then after that, N8, C6, and black's position prepares castling on the queen side. And if, for example, white plays king F2, and now is castle on the queen side, and now if knight G5, and then just play bishop E6, knight takes, F takes, and here the position is a slight advantage for white because there is F pawn weakness, and the D file is monopolized by the rook on D8. The knight will eventually make a move on D4, C2, and if white plays, for example, A3, then knight D3 check, capture, and the rook will eventually rule over the D file. Example here, knight rook D1, rook captures, knight takes, and if you can see, white's pieces are on the first rank. Rook F8, planning to capture the pawn on E5, and if for example he plays E3, and now G5, here G3, knight A5, because there is a weakness on C4, and I believe that this is really good for black. So eventually, if they play the D takes E5, after the queen captures, normally they will use the king to recapture. Alright, so after that, now knight moves to G4, prepares knight F2. White counter attack with the knight D5. Of course, black has to play now king D8, protecting the C7. Eventually, not knight F2. It's really dangerous. So after that, king has to protect also with the king E8, king E1, I should say. If, for example, he plays knight H3, black can already play f6. If e takes, f takes. Oops. Now in this move, white should develop the pieces, while black will do the same thing. And then after that, knight e3 and rook e8, and so on and so forth, and which gives black much better position, a much better position. So here, if we go back to the line, so instead of knight h3, white should play king e1. Okay, and then king e1, proceed, bishop attacks the knight on c3, and after that, knight moves back, knight c6, and then knight f3 and f6, breaking the center, the e5. Here, if example h3, just move back to nh6, and after which, after pawn takes pawn, because the pawn on e5 will fall if it doesn't capture the f6, and after that, king f2, and now knight f5, bishop d3, knight b4, rook e1, and rook e8, which gives equality to the position. Alright. And white has more activity than white's pieces. Black's two knights and the bishop there has more activity than white's pieces. And in some cases, black can prepare c6, and then followed by king c7, and then rook ad8, and which gives a good pleasant position. So if, for example, white plays g4, now we have here knight d6, bishop d2, then f5, and now the bishop on g7 is activated, and I guess this has given a slight advantage for black, a tiny slight advantage for black. So we just talk about the d takes e5 now. That's why it's not a better option. After d takes e5, normally white will capture e5 with f pawn. And so after the f takes, here now black should respond with the knight d5. Again, with this, white has choices here. There is bishop c4 and also knight takes d5. So let's talk about knight takes d5. If knight takes d5, black will have a very comfortable position because of this line. So knight f3, and followed by c5, c3, and now knight c6, bishop e2, and after that pawn takes pawn, c takes, bishop e6, castle, and now rook d8, and the position is most likely not so good for white, and I really like black here because the d pawn is really an isolated pawn. So let's talk about bishop c4, another line. So after bishop c4, we have bishop e6, queen f3, putting pressure on the d5. Now here black has a very tricky move. Knight d4. Looks like it was not so good, but after, for example, queen takes b7, black can respond a very tricky move. Yes, knight 8, c6 to trap the bishop. So for example, he plays here bishop b5, then probably just castle, and after bishop b takes, there you go. Good move, rook b8 first, capture, and after that, instead of capturing the c2, because the bishop is quite dangerous, so knight takes c5, and then after that there is knight takes d4, and white has to protect now the pawn, and there's no such thing as king d2 because of this is a blunder. And if for example he plays knight e4 to protect the that pawn, then we have here capturing the e5, and I guess this is again another winning position for black. So the trick, knight b4. In this position, if b takes now, it's f takes, queen takes, and again blunder because of knight c6. Now if white plays queen e4, then we have a very good move, queen takes d4, and after queen takes, queen, knight takes, and here king d1, and here we go, knight takes d4 with the plan of bishop takes e5. If for example he plays here, and now a very simple move, knight b, and black will castle on the queen side. At the same time, the e5 pawn is in big trouble, and here is a winning position for black. Okay, so we've talked about different lines. Now there is another possibility that white can play against the knight d5, and that is knight e4. Alright, so knight e4, black can just castle. I believe that black has a better position, because if you can see, white's move is only the pawn on e5 and d4 and knight on e4. So if he continues with this, bishop f5, knight g3, good move, bishop g4, bishop e2, and now c5, very popular, because this c5, it is weakening the e5. If for example d takes c5, then we have here queen a5 check. If bishop d2, then queen takes c5, and king cannot castle at the same time. Not really a good, well coordinated pieces for white. So in this position, after c5, c3 is moved. Again, we have c takes d4, c takes d4. Again, we have a weakness. White has a weakness on d4, and after knight c6, white castles, and queen b6, putting a pressure on d4, king h1, and now rook a d8, prepares, black will move knight c7 plan. So now here he plan knight g5. Of course, the move is bishop c8. If, for example, takes, and then black will recapture with the knight. So here, which is still a good, still good position, but after bishop e6 is even better. After knight f3, then there is now knight c7 attacking the pawn. After this, yeah, knight takes, because pawn cannot capture. If pawn captures, if ever, then there is queen takes, and the position is a very good for black. I hope you enjoyed this video, and please subscribe for more videos updates. Thank you for watching.